I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it, and that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. This podcast is brought to you by Jarhead Diagnostics. Jarhead Diagnostics manufactures in-house diagnostic equipment and storage solutions, as well as distributes for companies like Pico, ATS, and TopDon. One of my favorite tools that I've bought from Brandon and Jarhead Diag is the case for the U-Scope. If you don't have a U-Scope, you probably should, but if you have one, you got to get one of these 3D printed cases, has a magnet on it, has a full-size BNC lead that you can connect to, and it gets rid of the weak point of that scope, which is the mini BNC connection, which is pretty fragile. This case makes this thing nice and secure and makes it an even better tool than it was. So check out jarheaddiag.com. The link is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. We have got Auto Rescue Tools and Isaac Rodell as a sponsor for this podcast. Hey guys, if you're looking for programming laptops, you want the laptop set up ready to go for programming control modules on vehicles, you need key cutting equipment, you need diagnostic tools, Isaac is your guy. Has all that stuff available for purchase, and the support that he offers along with the purchase has been outstanding. I bought some stuff from him in the past. I got my Dolphin key cutting tool from him several years back. And again, the support has been phenomenal. Helped me out along the way with anything additional I needed to make it work for me. Also, for the month of June 2023, they've got Autel updates for sale. So make sure to check that out as well. Again, that's autorescuetools.com. The link will be in the show notes. Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. Today on the show, I have a guest joining me, Adam Ward. Adam's a friend of mine. He worked for Identifix for 9 years as a European specialist, working with the hotline when shops call in to diagnose problems. And he's currently employed by Autel, working in their product development.
And that's a couple of things that we're going to be talking about today is, some of the behind the scenes stuff at Identifix and what's involved with fixing cars over the phone. And then also some of the new things coming down the line at Autel. And they got some really cool stuff coming out. So only talk about a few other things too, but really enjoyed this talk with Adam. So let's jump right in.
I did a subframe at a Saturn once in my garage. Believe it or not, it was rusted out and bad. I kind of in retrospect, I'm not sure if I'm glad I did it or not. I was a bit younger though.
Well, that's the thing. The young days when you're doing this stuff in your driveway or on the floor in your garage.
In my garage in the winter with no heat and no insulation.
Yeah,
and I remember subframe in, and I'm making like $200, and I remember questioning all my life choices at that point. You're like, it's tools are ice cold. You're bitter. Yeah, it was not fun.
I remember wrestling in. I was doing a clutch, but I was putting the manual transaxle back into some little Infinity G20 or whatever it was. And I'm trying to get, the input shaft lined up and get the transaxle back in place. And I'm by myself laying on the ground, and the thing slips, and there's gear oil that's leaking all over me, because it just exactly my thought is, what am I doing with my life? Why did I not go to school to be like an IT guy or something?
Your career choices become highly questionable during those events, I've noticed. Right. Man, I feel you there, man. But I've done so many sketchy things on the side. Sometimes you just have to wonder.
That's how you learn, though, to say no to jobs when friends and family ask. You're like, "Ooh, yeah, sorry, I just don't have time for that one."
You're right. No, it's those tough choices that lead to the no, I can't do that. And that's where I'm at now, right? I'll be 50 in a couple of days, so I'm definitely in the no camp when it comes to pulling in transmissions on my back.
Yeah, I don't have the special tool for that one.
Yeah, I love that. That's the best one.
Well, thank you for joining me on the show, Adam. I really appreciate it. I think the first time we met was you were working for Identifix, and you were putting on it was like a diagnostic challenge. It was research for you guys on how service information was used, and you had some bugged vehicles, and several techs come in and work through different problems using service information. So I was actually curious on this, and this was a few years back, but what were you guys trying to learn from that? And I'm also curious to know, what did you learn from that experiment? I don't know how many times you ran it, but
Project Recon. Yes, that was the actual technical term, Project Recon. And we ran 4 cycles, 4 consecutive weekends, 4 techs, 4 vehicles. Or I'm sorry, 4 techs, 4 weekends, 4 vehicles. Okay. So the goal was to try to neutralize any advantage the technicians might have by doing similar repairs. So in other words, everybody does each diagnostic once, and then the next group comes in completely fresh, totally different. And essentially what we were trying to establish were a couple different things. Number one, how long on average did it take 4 different guys to fix this one car with 4 different types of information systems: Google, and Google, YouTube, Identifix, AllData, and Mitchell. And how long on average did it take all these different people with different backgrounds? And over the course of time, we actually were able to generate averages on how long it took to get to the fix with each information. And we stunningly, Google and YouTube came in 3rd place. It wasn't last.
Oh, really?
Mitchell was last, believe it or not.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess, nowadays with Google and YouTube, there is such a enormous amount of information out there. It really comes down to the individual's ability to sift through and search efficiently, and you can find a lot of stuff out there.
We were recording the screens. We were looking at keystrokes to see if there were search patterns from different people. Were they using it the same way, or were they using it differently? And were the people who did it faster, was it different in their keystrokes versus the people who did it took longer? Or was it just longer because there's a little bit of differences in how people go about tasks anyway, right? So you have a margin of error, of course. You get through a diagnostic on an Odyssey faster maybe than someone else with the same piece of information, but the keystrokes helped us as well. So it was sort of a multiple step process of, how fast and what were the keystrokes showing us as far as what were the search patterns and how the applications were used. And of course, in the end, how could we make ours better, and how and what advantage maybe did, say, an AllData or some of the others have. So AllData has their sort of universal format was favorable because when you're dealing with 4 different OEMs, if the type of information is displayed the same way each time, it's faster for a guy. If I look up a Honda the same as I look up as a Toyota, or the same as I look up a whatever, because it's all kind of been standardized.
Yep.
Faster than displaying it in the OE way, because I might know a lot about looking up OE information for one manufacturer, but I don't know anything about looking it up. And you know as well as I do from our conversations that part of your curriculum is people having to learn how to use service information, because it's actually that complicated, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I think
it's a skill set to navigate and navigate efficiently. And, we talked about that too, where, I think every service information has the search bar at the top now. I don't know of anyone that doesn't, and I like it and it's useful. And I definitely use it myself, but I try to push my students to, because they gravitate right towards the search bar, right? And they just want to put in whatever they are. I'm like, let's find that within this information, the manual path. I realize it's going to take more time. It's going to be time consuming, but understand how you got to that point of this particular service information. And it's going to benefit you in the long run, because eventually that search engine or that search bar is not going to work the way you intended it to. And you're going to have to go through and understand how this is formatted. It's a skill set to really search and find this stuff in a timely manner.
No. And the other point to carry on what you're saying is that by looking at it manually, you find things within there that you wouldn't have found with just a keyword search, because it filters all of the other stuff out, and there might actually be something good in there. I used to find just little nuggets here and there, and it took longer, but I don't regret it. The last thing we were doing is, I was keeping track of who did the best job, because they were secretly going into a folder going, oh, I need to hire somebody. That guy did pretty good. Shh.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. No, it's cool. But we were. And it's just, it was another way to network. And you also get to, meet different people, but you get to see what their skills are like. And you can tell pretty quickly how they diagnosed it, but the process they used to do it. So in other words, the confidence, not a lot of errors, kind of a steady methodical approach across all of the different vehicles. You could see it, right? Some guys got really bogged down and struggled in a certain car because they weren't familiar with it. The people that had a good diagnostic thought process, they didn't get bogged down because it was a Jeep. They didn't get bogged down because it was a Honda or a Volkswagen, right? They went to the problem, they dealt with it, right? And the process they used was consistent, and you could see it in the times it took for them to do each of those tasks.
And a process is so important when you're doing this stuff. And so that was actually one of the questions that I'm really curious about. And maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. So you did work for Identifix. How long did you work for Identifix for?
9 years.
Okay. And so did you actually work on the hotline, or what was your role there?
Yep. So I started out working as a car line specialist on the European team. My background, I came from a Volkswagen dealer. So I was hired in initially Volkswagen Audis, but I kind of tried to kind of fill in some of those oddball stuff that other people wouldn't, and the occasional Porsche and the Saab and just those cars that really would just kind of trickle in that nobody ever gained expertise besides Craig. He sat across from me, and I kind of picked at those. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I started out on the car line. Yes.
But so when you're doing that, the hotline over the phone. So, I mean, obviously I get a lot of shops that'll call me and they'll start, kind of questioning me on, oh, hey, this car's doing this and that. And I'm like, dude, I got to look at it. I'm like, I can't do this over the phone. It very rarely can I grab the symptoms they tell me over the phone and tell them what it was. Somebody called me on a purge valve the other day. They were like, yeah, every time they, fill up with gas, it doesn't start. I'm like, put a purge valve in it. But that doesn't happen very often. And right. I got to imagine, and especially if you're doing European vehicles, that's got to be a hell of a struggle to do this over the phone. How did you get through every day?
So what I found was that 5 to 7 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes of intense listening, kind of slow the conversation down. They kind of come in and they're all over the place, and you kind of have to let them sort of speak their piece, right? And you're listening. I mean, doing this listening skills and knowing what questions to ask skills are like the two most valuable skills when you're trying to do remote diagnostics. So stop, and you usually have to go, okay, why? This is the most important question. Why is the car in the shop right now?
Yes.
What brought the car here? Is this a first-time customer? Is this a second or third time attempt at a repair? It got towed into from another shop. Is this the guy next to you is on vacation and it's his comeback? What's the history on the vehicle? What have we touched this car at all? That's where that's where you go, okay. I'd say 8 times out of 10, yes, we've been working on this car. What did you do? Tell me exactly what you did.
Yeah.
And that's so important. My favorite diagnosis came from the guy, Jim Newkirk. It was an Audi. It was a 3-liter Audi, 2004 AVK, which is the goofy 4 variable cam gears with a timing belt.
Okay.
So it was like variable valve timing, but without a chain, it was a belt, and the phasers fill with oil, but it's got a belt, right? And you need 2 claws to set this thing up. So basically, you loosen all the bolts, you lock the cams down, you put a pin in the crank, right? You tension the belt, you preload the exhaust, right? And you lock it all down, right? So the car was out of time. The guy had put a timing belt on it.
Okay.
So everyone's like, okay, so you got the special tools. Yep. Put the pin in. Blah, 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 blah. I got the claws on, blah, blah, blah. I did everything. Okay, well, it should be in time. So you're sending in the measure value blocks and you're looking at this cam's out of time, man. Something's not right. This thing's out of time. All the cams are out of time. And call after call. And so finally, Jim got him. And Jim was like the senior guy, had been there forever, right? And he's just like, okay, let's go through this one more time. He's like, step by step, I want you to tell me exactly how you set up the timing belt. Okay. I rolled the engine around to TDC number 1. He goes, whoa, wait a second. What? I rolled the engine around to TDC number 1. I put the pin in. He goes, no. It's TDC number 3. the pin would go in and it would just put enough pressure on the crank. It would hold it, but it was holding it number 1 top dead center instead of number 3 where there's actually a machined hole. So him making the guy go through like step by step, explain exactly what you did. That fixed the car.
No kidding.
Everyone else just listened to the guy and he was like, yep, I put the crank pin in, I locked it down, I put the clamps on. You're going, okay, yep, that's exactly what I would have done, except you didn't ask the right question.
Well, that's the thing is you must have a lot of people where they're confident in what they're telling you.
Correct.
But they're misinterpreting something, or like if they're doing a test, if you're trying to get a voltage value or something and they're just performing the test wrong. I got to imagine you run into that all the time.
Yes. Yep. Wrong wire. Tell me exactly what's your meter. What's your meter set at? Go back. Let's just tell. And some. I had one guy who was a bad lead. He goes, I can't get this signal. He goes, I back probe it. It's flat. When I back probe it, the car runs weird. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. And you're thinking, okay, it's dragging the signal voltage down and it's dropping out and stalling. And then you're just finally just like, just try a different tool. Okay, it's fine. It was bad. It's a bad lead. he had to fix the car, and in the process of just testing his work, he had a bad lead.
fix his tools too.
Fix the tools. So it's listening and not and like I said, and but you have to do it in a way that's not, patronizing either. So you don't want to make the guy feel like he's dumb. You don't want to talk down to him, because trust me, I don't know everything, and these guys work on. I'm working on Volkswagen's Audis. This guy's working on 27 different manufacturers. So you can probably tell me stuff on a Chevy or a Ford or a Dodge or a whatever, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, I don't know that.
Well, and then when they're calling in, they're already frustrated, right? Because it probably depends on the shop and the person, but I know, like I had Identifix for most of my career as a tech, and when we were calling the hotline, like we'd use the archive all the time, but when we were calling the hotline, we got our butts kicked already, and we weren't in the greatest of moods to begin with,
right?
But what was
calling
nice,
in, it's probably something's red. I mean, it's
what was nice is talking to whoever it was, and I remember we worked with Mark Owens. Do you work with him, the GM guy?
GM team manager.
Yep. And he was buddies with yes, he was buddies with the shop owner at the shop I worked at, because they worked at Chevrolet together. But anyways, we'd call them up, and even if they didn't like know the answer, point us exactly where to go, it was kind of one of those things where you bounce stuff off, or you speak out your steps out loud, like you were talking about, and you realize, okay, wait, maybe I wasn't so thorough on this check, or maybe I skipped over or didn't understand what I was seeing here, and it always ended up getting us to the right answer. Even if they didn't tell us the answer, it sent us down the right path. Yeah,
exactly. And sometimes it's just because we've studied those systems so many times on so many of those vehicles, the systems are the same. You've memorized the system operation kind of this, whatever it is, and you can just sort of speak it out. So sometimes just being able to call in and say, actually, that one has vacuum, that one doesn't, this one is this. And it's like, okay, did you pull the gas tank down? Yes. Okay. Those two lines can go backwards. So they're not dummy proof on this car, right? So sometimes it's just that, knowing that. Unplug the one. Is there vacuum on it? No. Unplug the body. Okay, flip those around. Bam. Now your whatever problem is, it's a lot of times it's those things, right? It's just we've been drenched in those systems for so long that it's some of just those sort of basic operations, or even complicated operations. What it would take for you to go through and read the entire systems operation on a leak detection pump, how does it work, and all this stuff, it takes a long time, right?
And sometimes, especially on a Volkswagen, it's really tough to interpret, right? I need someone to explain this to me in mechanic talk.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. It's a bicycle pump. So I always tell people it's a bicycle pump. The other thing is, it was always, and it's also the tricks, kind of like the leak, testing for like evap leaks on those. It's kind of like, hey, I'm testing this, and I can't tell if it's a leak, but there's smoke in the wheel well. That's where the LDP is. There's a filter on the end. So to actually just pinch the pliers off, just pinch it off, it seals the system up. You don't have to turn on the scan tool. You don't have to turn on the car. And I used to just tell guys, pull the fender liner down, turn the machine on. When you see smoke come out of the filter, pinch it off. Now it's full and it's sealed. Done. So sometimes it's just little things you can help somebody get through a quick thing where they don't, first they're like, I don't know why I've got smoke coming out of this thing, right? Maybe they've never seen one of these before. So sometimes it's just that it's just that little aha moment.
Sure. So tying this back to where I started with Identifix, was doing this whole thing where you're talking to people on the phone, trying to help them out through this process. Mm-hmm. That's the word. Is, did you guys have like a written out process? And I don't need to know what it is step by step, but was there something like, you do this, you do that, you do this? Was that part of your structure when you came into work every day?
So It wasn't really rigid. There was a couple of things you were always trying to do. So the car would come in the queue, and there'd be a repair order, right? On our, it's like a digital repair order. And it would have the vehicle information. We always wanted to get the VIN, because on Volkswagen you always wanted the engine code. I want the transmission code. I want to be able to put all that stuff in there. And then when it came to taking notes, I wasn't a fast typer, but there were things that we always wanted to try to get. And for me, it was always, I want to get, it's kind of just like, I always thought about it kind of like as a repair order, right? Cause, complaint, correction. So first off, I want the actual symptom. I want to know what it is wrong, because you might have a paragraph, you might have 2 words, you might have a manifesto of a guy who's just completely frustrated, and there's like, oh my God, this dude's been working on this car for a week. I feel so bad for him. There was one guy, Bob, he hated cars. It was funny because he would write out a whole thing and it'd be like, in the very bottom, you go, thank you, Bob, I hate cars. That's how he signed every repair order that he put in the system. He'd submit online. It was just funny. I just remember that he was kind of a little crotchety older guy, right? And he is just, you could tell he'd been wrenching for probably 30 plus years, and he didn't like European cars that much, and he got stuck with them. So he came into our queue quite a bit. But you always want to get the symptom. You always want to document what direction you sent the guy. So we're going to go test. We're going to go get this piece of information. We're going to go look at this value. I want you to back probe this sensor and get me some readings. Let's gather this data information, and I would document that. So there was a basic structure we did when we documented. So symptom, test steps, correction, because eventually it turned into an archive.
Sure. Yeah, which we've all used many times, which is
right.
super helpful.
I always looked at an archive as a partnership between me and the guy I'm helping. And I never really looked at it as I'm the smart guy. I know everything. I always looked at it as I'm lucky because I got somebody calling in, right? They're going to share the problem with me, and I'm going to try to help them solve this problem. But they're part of it. It's never just me saying, you're going to blindly do all these things and it's going to point you to the problem. It was their knowledge and intuition that helped along the way, because and when you got to working with people, it'd be kind of like, well, I did the test and I found this. I did that. Yeah, cool. Okay. Now I know what's going on. So the test I may have given them didn't get us exactly there, but it put us in the general area. But the results of the test, now we can move in the right direction. So
sure, not
every test I gave was the right one, but it was close enough. And usually the guys were smart enough that you kind of get them in, right? You're kind of helping them get into that area. Like, let's get out of these other areas. Let's focus over here. And so you kind of tunnel in the problem. So we avoid losing our ass over there and there and there. Let's try. And that was my goal. Is I'm probably not going to fix it on the first call, but if I can get way closer to the problem, help somebody get way closer to the problem, then we're halfway home.
It would get you in the right funnel at least. To get you at least going towards the problem, and that's how I felt when I used it too. Sure. What do you do with a situation where there's limited tooling with the shop, right? Because anybody who has a subscription can call, but what they have available for testing equipment, or even equipment to perform the work, are there creative solutions to get around roadblocks, or you just tell people, hey, you got to buy this tool?
It really depends on what tool it is they're missing. Like, if you can't time the injection pump, it's kind of like, right? There are certain tools you almost can't get away with, because it's like, we might get it to start, but we're not going to get the light off, right? And if we could, it would be this long, painful. So I kind of just use the honesty scenario. If there is a hack to get around it, we will. Yeah. If there isn't, then I'm just honest, and I'll tell them, hey, look, the tool you really need costs this much money. If you think you're going to be working on these cars a fair bit, and you want to roll the dice and make an investment in the tool, cool. But if you think you're never going to see one of these again, then you might want to just stop and have a conversation with the customer, see what's best for you in your shop. And that's kind of how I personally handle it. I'm not going to force them to buy a tool, right? But yeah, if I can find a hack, sure. So yeah, there were, tricks, tips. Yeah, we could use a voltmeter in some places where you really wanted a scope, duty cycle, average voltage. We can tell if there's a signal there, kind of. So you kind of get that to where like, okay, I'd like to see the LIN bus, but if you unplug it and you put your voltmeter there and the voltmeter isn't steady, it's 10-ish volts and it's kind of moving a lot, there's a signal there. So you have those kind of little shortcuts in certain, that if it's 4 volts or 2 volts, okay, we've got a problem. This LIN bus is dead. There should be, it's an 11 volt and it's binary bits being exchanged on the network, right? And it looks a little bit weird on a scope, but on a voltmeter, it's 10-ish volts. And then like signal wires that get pulled down in series for like a signal to a fan controller, that just your standard duty cycle. Sure. It's high speed is typically 2 volts, right? Medium, 50% duty cycles about 5.5-ish volts, right? So you kind of have those little tricks you can kind of help people get through if they don't have a full-blown scope in some areas where they needed it. So yeah, a vacuum gauge is a quick way to kind of look at and see if valve timing's an issue. It's like you've got this code and your vacuum gauge is doing this. Yeah, your intake valves are open, not supposed to be. It's out of time. So now you decide. Do you want to buy tools, tear it down, and mechanically at a time? How do you want to go about it? So yeah, we had tricks that we kind of learned over the years to kind of shortcut some things.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. The scope was kind of the one I was wondering about, because I go to a lot of shops that don't have, or I don't know, don't use the scope. And so if I was trying to get them to scope something over the phone, it'd be tricky.
You had to kind of, sometimes they would have it and didn't know it. And then you did have, it was a learning curve. It's kind of it get a little rough. And there were some cases where you had to have a scope. It was just simple as that. And, sometimes the tricks get you only so far. Like we can get an idea if there's a signal here, but depending on the code, we might need a scope. So.
Right. Yeah. The situations where that's the answer for sure.
Yep.
Did you ever have anybody just flat out lie to you about what was going on with the car? Because I've worked with people I've worked, with shops where that's the case, where I know their pride is hurt or whatever it is. And yes. I know they're not telling me the truth because I measured it. I'm like, that's what it is, man. I'm not trying to demean you in any way, but
I did. I won't forget it. I remember it. It was fuse 5. Its car had a blown fuse 5. I knew it on the first call. Fuse 5 is blown because it was like that fuse powers up like 12 different things. If you've got these 7 codes and all this stuff over here doesn't work, right? Fuse 5 is blown, right? Mm-hmm. So like you check all the fuses. Yeah, they're all good. You check fuse 5. Yeah, it's good. It's there, right?
Yeah.
Well, you think I'm stupid? I'm like, no, I'm serious. It happens, right? I said, and it's not easy to count those fuses because it's not this way. There's like, and they're stacked, right? You've got the mini fuses up above, and then if you got these ones, they count differently. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Yeah. And then down here, they count all the way down, right?
Okay.
So it's just, I'm like, it's no big deal. And he's like, no, I'm sure it's good. Okay, fine. So let's go out to the pressure sensor, turn the key on, go to the black blue wire. You got 12 volts. Nope. Okay. Go over here. Check this. Okay. You got 12 volts. Nope. Well, yeah, they're we got a bad splice or something. So he's like just working it back. And he's refusing to go back to the fuse. You're sure the fuse? Yeah, I'm sure the fuse is good. I'm like, all right. He took it to the point where he actually removed the fuse box, pulled out the back of it, and he tested. I'm like, text that pin. Is there power on that one? Yes. Is there power on that one? No. The only thing between those 2 points is the fuse. And then he's like, wow, he hangs up the phone on me. And then when finally he calls back, well, it was just a bad connection. It wasn't pushed in all the way. And he just, he tried to explain away the fact that the fuse was blown. So
yeah,
he turned it into like a 2-hour ordeal. So, but, and that was for me, that was a learning experience. So one of the things I always tell guys when they were kind of pushing back on like wanting to get too deep into testing, or they didn't want to do something, I kind of remembered that. And I said, okay, look, whatever is wrong with this car is wrong, whether we like it or whether we want to tear something down. If there's a bad splice that's in the middle of that wiring harness that's bad, we could dance all around this car Not going to fix it till we. So I'm just saying we can't wish the problem away.
Yeah.
Right. You can't. It's inevitable. Whatever's broken is broken. And whether I want it to be the PCM or whether I want it to be a wiring harness, whether I don't want it to be a head gasket, if the head gasket's bad, I may not want to replace it. But if it's blown, it's got to get done to fix the car. So
sure.
It made me think about it in that terms of the guy didn't want to admit this fuse was blown. And he was willing to spend 2 hours wasting his time away instead of just swallowing his pride and going in and saying, yeah, the fuse is blown. Shit, I screwed up.
Yep. But yeah, I think we've all been there at least at one point, and whether we learn from it or not is another thing. But just fighting our pride in this industry, because these cars will humble the crap out of you. It's crazy.
Yeah, I had a guy who also the other lied. What was a fuel pressure problem car, and I'll never forget. It's crank no start. Okay, well, you hit it with some carb cleaner. Does it fire up? Yep. I'm like, oh, what's fuel pressure? It's good. Okay, well, good like 50 pounds or good like 40 pounds or good like what? I mean, what's good? I mean, that's like compression is good. Okay, well, good for a lawnmower or good for a 2012 350Z. Which one, right? So, right. 80 pounds on my Briggs is okay, but 80 pounds in this, no, it isn't. So. Nope, I checked it. It was, and he spits out whatever the spec was, 58.2 or 58 pounds, right? It's like dead on the money. I'm like, all right, 58 now. Well, I mean, if you've got really good fuel pressure, it's not coming out of the injectors. We got like a main power going in the injectors. It's not opening, but you don't have any injector codes. No, I'm like, now it's not adding up, right? So if you've got 58 pounds of fuel pressure and you're dry as a bone, you got nothing coming in, every single injector circuit was open, there should be triple codes.
Yep.
So I'm like, all right, well, look, check the power wires, put a Noid light on, because he didn't want to budge off the whole fuel pressure thing. And he did he's like, okay, fine, I'll do that. So he called me back. Yeah, the lights flashed and this and that, and then I rechecked fuel pressure. Okay. What'd you have? Well, I didn't have any. Okay. Okay. Well, now we're getting somewhere. Is there fuel in the tank? What do you think I am? I said, no, I'm serious. I mean, what if the customer doesn't know their gas gauge is broken? It says there's half a tank and this thing's bone dry. I wouldn't be dumb enough to let that. All right. Fuel pump relay. This is how it works. Crank the engine over. We should see power on this fuse, 28. And go back, pull up the seat, brown wire, red and blue wire, back probe, crank the engine. Do we have power? Yeah, I got power. Okay, we got power at the pump. You got no pressure. Either you got a bad pump or the tank's empty. The tank was empty.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's not lying, but it's pride. You're right. They just, they don't want to accept that. And again, inevitably, the car was out of gas on call one. Had you just told me, I didn't check fuel pressure, I could have said, all right, great, get a gauge. Let's see what it is. This is how it works.
Sure.
And then, right. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an important lesson for anybody, just to swallow that at some point or another, because they're going to find you. These cars, they will they will make you look stupid at one point or another. You just got to accept it.
Do you want to slip a ring on the finger of this car, or do you want to fix this thing, man? Which one is it? If you want to, I'll give you enough rope to hang yourself, man. If you want to turn this into 12 calls, and I've had people to do that, they refuse, and we would just come. We come all the way back around, right? They didn't, and eventually you got better at shortcutting people and stopping them, right? So you start to go down, and sometimes in the beginning you let them take you all the way around, and then you start to get a little bit better. You're like, okay, look, I've been here before. I've done this. We're probably gonna spend a lot more time going down that road. And then you're going to be calling me tomorrow and the next day, and you want to get off this thing and make some money, man. Don't marry this thing. Let's do this. So you have to kind of craft, really, communication and listening skills become almost, and detective skills a little bit too.
Yeah, just to be able to sense when something doesn't seem right.
Yes, that's exactly. You can tell just by how they answer the question if they've done it or not, right? The pause.
Yep.
Right. And then they answer. And then it's kind of like, okay, yeah, now I know you didn't do step 3. Okay, cool.
Yep. That's what they say in teaching too, is give them 8 seconds of silence, and most of the time somebody will say something as you just kind of wait them out and something will happen.
The best guys on the hotline are the ones who listen the most, and they learned a lot from the people that called in too. I learned as much, and I learned as much as I learned as much information as I gave, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you what. So I go out, I do the mobile thing, and I go to a lot of the shops to do the diagnostic work. But these guys that I'm going to work with, the techs, not every single one of them. You got people that are fresh and people that aren't really invested in the industry, but you got the veterans and some guys that are really, really smart with specific things. Like I go to a lot of transmission shops, and I got guys that know transmissions like down to the clutch, in and out, and super, super intelligent for what they're doing, their specific craft, right? Or whatever it might be, building engines or suspension or whatever. And yeah, you can pull so much information from these guys. It's just crazy. I have a few of them that I call for stuff, especially transmissions.
Oh, nice.
I'm not a tranny guy. Like I can do the electrical part. I can tell you if the module and the solenoids are doing their thing. And that's about as far as I go. But if there's something weird and I don't understand how it works, I'm calling up these guys like, hey, I got this thing with this transmission. It's doing this weird thing. How does this work? And you can't discount anybody that's really, a professional in this industry, because they've got something to offer, and they can really, really help you out if you're willing to not. I never want to walk in and consider like I'm better than you. Like that's not my goal at all. I just have a specialty. And what's your specialty? Share that with me,
Right. Yeah. And for me, it was, if they're willing to do a test and give me a value that I can put into an article that someone else can use, that's gold. I mean, that's like, why would you not want to work with that person?
I told you, I think when I did the challenge things, one of my favorite parts about Identifix was the notes from the technicians in the archive. Correct. I always scan those because there are some really nice gems of information within the technician notes that they actually posted in the fix. I want to see those.
Right. Yeah. That's a huge, huge thing that I want to try to be able to capture and make it a little more notable in the Autel's version of what they're trying to do. That's going to become very crucial, because the act of confirming a part needs to be a much more intricate part of the content itself. I don't want someone to check off a box. Yep, it's fixed it. Why? How? Did that actual part that's listed fix it, or did something else fix it? And if something else did fix it, what was it? It's valuable. So we'll work to maybe have a reward system for people of, hey, every time you confirm a fix, you get a certain number of points. And those points can be redeemable towards tools or something maybe, right? Because that's just as important, because it's great having an article with text and diagrams and pictures, and it helps you get to a problem. It's even better when someone who's been through there once goes, yeah, but when I got there, this is what was wrong. Got to the part, but it didn't fail in this way, it failed in that way, or it failed as the result of something else that was in the same area. It had come loose over time because something had rusted and it was rubbing, and then it shorted, whatever, right? But that's the stuff that you can't get until someone does it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this thing failed and it was supposed to put out 5 volts, but it was putting out 3.2 volts on this wire. And that happens to be how they fail. And there's always 3.2 volts on that wire. That's a very valuable piece of information to me if I'm actually doing the testing.
Right. And especially if it gets a situation where you have, like, let's say plugged in, it's usually 5 volts, but when you unplug it, maybe the plausibility voltage is 3 volts. So when it's plugged in and shorted, it's 3. When you unplug it and you test it, it's still 3. Well, okay, nothing's wrong here.
Yep, for sure.
So those are those little nuggets that you get where someone's in the boots on the ground is doing that, going, wait a second, this. Or and maybe it's something as simple, as stupid as, it's a mouse was living on top of this. That's a common problem.
Yep.
I got in there for this.
I had a hungry mouse today on a 14 E250.
Okay.
He got real hungry and chewed through a couple cam lines, accelerator, pedal position, and something with the transmission. So
certain cars, Beetles where the ECM always was. Oh man.
Yeah.
It was in the plenum area, but the plenum area was sort of behind the instrument cluster almost. And it was just a great area because you had the pollen filter on the right, you had the ECM on the left. So they chew up the pollen filter, and they come over and chew on the wiring harness.
I really want to know what it is about wires that they like so much, right? It's just a rodent thing. Like, I have to chew this. This looks delicious.
I've heard different things about, like, the insulation has to be made with some type of biodegradable content. So it doesn't last forever, and like a landfill doesn't last 1 billion years or something, right? So they make it, and I don't know if you remember older Mercedes, they apparently got a little too aggressive with whatever they were using in the 90s, and the stuff, the insulation would just kind of decay by itself, and all the wires start touching each other.
Brian set the half-life on that, right?
Exactly. Brian Franta is like, oh, it's a 99 whatever. Oh yeah, it needs a harness. Yeah. He picked up the phone. What is it doing? He goes, reach back there and pull on that. Did it stall? Yeah, it needs a wiring harness. It's just the insulation rots right away. So,
but you don't have rodents. You would have rodents in that case, I guess, if it was that. It's basically cardboard,
right?
All right, so now you are working for Autel. What is your role with Autel right now?
So Autel is obviously just making tools, but what they're trying to do is they want to create applications within the tools to help support technicians better. So in other words, just instead of making a tool and hand it to them saying, hey, this tool scans the car, it does cool things. Yeah. They want applications that say, hey, not only does the tool scan the car, but it can be your scope, and it can do programming, and it can also potentially have repair information available. It can have intelligent diagnostics, right? So my role is sort of industry experience and knowledge on what technicians deal with, how they go about diagnosing cars, what they need to diagnose cars, and then I work with developers on the application. So they're writing applications, but my sort of role is, this is how it needs to be displayed. This is the type of features it needs to have. This is what's going to save people time.
Okay.
So awesome. I review the tools, I use the tools, and then I go through the applications. We also do we're starting to work through some of the translation things. So Chinese translated directly to English, that mechanism, the English version of that, it can be a little rough. It doesn't translate real smoothly. So the wording is kind of, it's not smooth.
Yeah, saving for data or something like that.
Yeah. Log in succeed instead of log in successful, right? So believe it or not, we're actually going through pages of these kinds of things and going, okay, here, this is what it should say, and here, that is what it should say. And eventually we'll get into some of the nomenclature they use for like hot functions and some of the other things, because it's kind of like, why is that hot functions? Because in their term, when it translated, that's how it translated in.
Okay.
So that's some of the other issues we're trying to work with them on too.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Autel, since they popped onto the scene, as far as I was aware, I don't know, it's probably 10 years. Well, wait. Let's see. I'm trying to think of when I bought my first Autel. So I bought a DS708. I want to say it was in like 2013 or so, somewhere around there. And ever since then, they've been, very present, just the tip of the spear on all this stuff. I mean, the 708, it changed what I could do as a technician. I was just at Firestone. I was using a junk OTC Pegasus, which I hated so much. Oh man. And So I got so frustrated. I went and I bought my own tool, or my own scan tool. I never had my own scan tool. I always used the shops. And I bought the 708, and the thing just kicked ass for what it was. I mean, it was so much better than any scan tool that I had used. And they've been seeming at the forefront for a lot of stuff for quite a while now. I do the J2534, the immobilizer stuff.
Yep.
They include the programmer for EEPROM stuff in there too. And now I know Matthew Skundrich is like doing a beta of remote programming. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff coming down the pipeline, it seems.
Yes. Yeah, they're getting far more aggressive at the support end of what they can offer through the tool. Because I mean, the scan tool has become the single most common tool most people have and use. I mean, it's almost. I mean, I can't think of a day where. I mean, I think when I had my days at Identifix, I mean, everything revolved around a scan tool. Everything. It was grab your scanner, whether it's codes, whether it's data, right? And I remember the first Autel tool I helped somebody with was a MaxiDOS. They had a MaxiDOS, and I was like, okay, well, go here. What do you got? Oh, you actually can do that? Yeah. Okay, go here. You can do that? Yeah. Oh, wow, really? Tell me what's over there. That. Hey, it's right. You can get that block? Yeah. Oh, cool. Snap-on can't do that. Sweet. I like this tool, right? So it was like, it was like one of my, when I was working with someone on a Volkswagen, if they didn't have VAGCOM, Autel was the next best thing to VAGCOM, really.
Sure.
So if the shop didn't have VAGCOM, they had an Autel, get the Autel. I got a Snap-on. No. Put the Snap-on away on this car, get the Autel, trust me. Maybe on a Ford or whatever, I guess, I don't know, but for me on Volkswagens, Autel was the number two choice when it came to VAGCOM. And today I mean, obviously I like the Autel. I work for Autel. I think the tool's, really, really good. So
sure. I mean, it's got holes like everything else, right? Like no one tool is going to be perfect for everything. But
all around.
All around.
And that was the thing versatile. Is VAGCOM was awesome but it's only for Volkswagen. That's it. That's all it does. Right. So if I had to choose between VAGCOM and Autel, it's Autel because this can do everything. This can do my Honda, my Chevy, and it can do my Volkswagen. And one tool can do it all for the most part. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. There are certain people that'll preach like you should only use the factory tool if you want to be a professional, and that's fine if you're only working on one line of vehicle. And at a dealership, of course, you are, but even dealers have Autels. And if you're a specialty shop
at a Volkswagen dealer, we had VAGCOMs. Because the factory tool is so freaking slow sometimes. It's like, I don't want to do guided fault finding. Plug this thing in, bam, I'm in.
Exactly. But if you're in the independent world at all and you're working on multiple brands, you got to have something that is versatile, that can hit every brand with at least some amount of efficiency. And maybe there's one that's weak, whatever. Sure. But super, super handy. And I've always enjoyed their tools. I got to say I have the IM 508, and I know there's a 608, which is the scan tool, the full diagnostic portion. I didn't go that route because I already had several tools like that. But the 508, I was so impressed with this little tool I think I picked up for like $1,200 or something a few years back. Yeah. The immobilizer. And then the EEPROM processor programmer stuff that I didn't even realize when I bought it. Like I saw that it had that. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I bought the XP, the additional, the actual programmer thing for it for $400 or whatever it was. But what I was able to do with that, once I attended some training and stuff, I was so impressed with what they packed into this little tool. I was like, holy cow, this is pretty sweet.
It is amazing. I mean, from a technological perspective, I mean, 10 years ago, it was almost you were like, oh, it's got an immobilizer problem. Oh, I'm gonna have to call a locksmith. Up, you're gonna have to tow to the dealer. Up, you're gonna right.
Yeah.
And then bam, now here it is. It's like, wow, you can get programming done, keys. I mean, you do it all.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So you guys are working on adding some technician features to the tool, right? So this is support through the tool as far as diagnostic works. What is that going to look like, or what do you guys want that to look like?
So they've been working with, and I mean, I'm just starting. I do seeing sort of the edges of this, but intelligent diagnostics is one of the areas they're making inroads in, which is kind of like guided diagnostics, if you will, on a factory tool. So you're working on a BMW. Let's say it's an F30 chassis. You plug it in, right, and it's an 09, 10, whatever, and 3 series, and you have a trouble code. It will be able to preload diagnostic strategies and troubleshooting areas that you can go through to assist in diagnosing the vehicle. So instead of just giving you a code and definition, it can say, hey, here's how this works. Here is the system description. Here's everything you need to know about that particular part. Here's how you test it.
Okay.
So they're adding some of the intelligent diagnostics in it, right? So you'll have the ability to do testing without having to go to a service manual. The thing that you were talking about with was it Matt Skundrix you were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Remote Expert is a remote programming scenario that they're working on, and I'm kind of in the middle of that somewhat too. So basically, it's going to allow people to link to a platform to get assistance and get programming done via a network of people.
Okay.
And you would be able to pick whom you wanted to do. So the goal there would be I can open an application, right, on my tool. I can push a button on my tool, and I've got a whatever I want to get this car programmed. And somewhere out across the country, there's people with applications, and think they're logged in, and bam, there's whoever with a such and such wants to is replacing the ECM and needs to get it programmed.
Okay.
And they'll accept that order and link up with the person and perform programming from wherever they are. Now that person's in California and the car's in New Mexico, so be it.
That's pretty sweet.
So that'll be, something that populates on the dashboard of the tool. So anyone with a 909 919 Ultra had that application, pushes a button. I need this programmed. It's a push of a button.
All right. So last thing I was curious about, and this kind of ties in Identifix and maybe some of the future of Autel as well. Mm-hmm. They provide a resource to technicians, to shops, as far as fixing cars. So like the archive for mm-hmm. Identifix, for instance, or, intelligent diagnostics with Autel. And so a lot of people look at this as a crutch to shops that keeps them from, maybe it keeps them from is a bad way to put it, but doesn't it incentivize them to get better at their own personal skills as figuring this stuff out? They can just rely on this information that they're paying for, right? They're paying for the subscription, they're getting the information, but that it acts as a crutch, and it keeps the skill level at a set point because they're okay just going with the top hit. And then if that doesn't fix it, we go to the next one. I'm just curious to know what your feelings are on that, being involved with, this as long as you have been.
Sure. So I looked at, I've kind of thought about this quite a bit because I've heard that criticism, and I kind of go back to, if we go back prior to Identifix, we go back prior to being able to call someone for assistance or find something, how did things used to happen? In a service shop, there would be a guy, and he was new. What did he do when he was stuck? He'd go ask somebody, right? Mm-hmm. How else, what is he going to learn? Is he going to sit here and, lose his butt on this car and never know? He's going to ask people. Somebody's going to show him. Someone's going to help him. Now, that person has a choice. Do they continue to go to get help, or do they learn from that and grow? So I think that there's a percentage of people who will misuse a system like that, and yeah, they'll just shotgun parts in it and they'll use it for what it is. I think the vast majority of people, though, I think they use it in the same way that we used to do it, which is you ask someone smart sometimes for help in the shop when you were green. You trained underneath someone who was your mentor. You learned, you went to classes, right? And you grew. And I think that this is a digital version of that. You use the archives, you learn from the archives, and if you do it the right way, you still grow professionally. There's always going to be a percentage of people who don't. There's always going to be that percentage of people who do use something in a way that limits their abilities and limits their own personal growth. So
yeah,
I think that all in all, I don't think it's Identifix that's causing it. I think they're providing a service. I think it's just the same percentage of people who misuse that are the same ones who also misused that were always asking for help. Right? There was always that one guy who always, no matter what, he would always go wander around, ask everyone to help him fix his car, and then he'd go shotgun some stuff in it, right? That didn't change.
yeah.
That still exists now. It's just that same percentage is using Identifix the same way as the guy in the shop used to wander around always for years and never grew. He just wanted to take the easy way out. I think you have that same group still now.
No,
but they're loud.
Yeah. Well, I think you're onto something there. Is that, you know, the technologies and stuff that whether it be Identifix or something like crazy like social media or Facebook or whatever everybody blames it as, it's like evil or whatever. But does it really just amplify, you know, kind of what's already wrong, what was already present as a problem, and now it's amplified with this technology? But can it be used for some really good stuff at the same time? I think that's true as well. If you're using this information to actually do the testing, to actually learn and to understand, okay, I'm getting some help here, but you know, I skipped to the end at this, I call it a cheat code, right? It's an automotive cheat code. I up, down, left, right, A, B,
right.
And I got to the end, but okay, so what did I skip over here using that, and how can I apply that next time when I go to this one? I think that's where it is, where a technician's got to recognize they're in that situation and apply it to the next time, because nobody can do this on their own. Like if we had to all figure out all of this stuff from scratch, I'd still be working on a Chevy Corsica trying to figure out what was going on with it back in.
Look at the tools in our hands.
Yeah,
you could say the scanner's a crutch. You pick it up all the time. Well, you have to, right? I mean, you know, how many books would it take to match the database of all data or Identifix? How many books?
Yeah,
you need the Library of Congress sitting next door, sifting through papers. So I mean, yeah, there's I feel that and also kind of the other analogy is borrowing tools. If you had to borrow the same tool 4 or 5 times, go buy it. And a lot of people will do that. They'll say, you know what, I'm tired of borrowing this tool. I do use it a lot. I'm going to go buy myself one. But there's that 5 or 7% of people who will just continue to borrow other people's tools because they can do it as long as they can get away with it. So I think that those, I don't think Identifix makes people worse. I think it helps people be better in different ways. Yeah,
for sure. Well, shoot, this was awesome. Do you got anything else you wanted to add?
So this is a trend I'm seeing, and I'm just curious, what do you see as the future of brick and mortar shops? Do you think that's going to continue, reduce, or stay the same out of just a specific mandatory number of you? Sometimes you got to have a hoist. Or do you foresee cars technologically advancing to the point where brick and mortar shops will just slowly but steadily kind of fade away into the dustbin of history?
Well, I mean, until they start flying around, you've always got stuff like brakes, steering, suspension, tires, and that stuff is never going to stop breaking, right? So there's got to be means to fix that, no matter what, no matter how fancy or electric the car is.
Sure,
that stuff's going to break, right? So it's going to be a while, and you know, there's been a lot of people talking about, independent repair shops are going to start dwindling down because of the specialties of repairs. And I get it. I really, really get it, because it's tough out there right now for independent repair shops that aren't trained or tooled or geared up. But at the same time, I see the trying to think of the best word here, maybe, entrepreneurship or just ingenuity of people that want to make money in this field is way more than people expect. And maybe it's not always done the right way, right away, or in certain areas, but there's just so many cars out there. There's so many broken cars, and there's a lot of money to be made. People are going to figure it out, right? They are going to utilize that remote programming or that mobile diagnostic, and they're going to make it happen as long as there's money to be made. The only thing I really see slowing that down is if there's some sort of government intervention with, autonomous vehicles, and that could really put the brakes on aftermarket independent repair shops. But other than that, boy, there's a lot of broken cars out there still, and for a while, right? You figure everything right now made in 2021 is going to be out there for at least 15 more years.
Sure. What's the average age of a vehicle on the road right now? Almost 13 years, 12 to 13 years is the average age of a car right now. So What's made today going to be here 12 years from now still.
Yep.
So in the internal combustion engine, it's in the palette. It's in the slate of production for most manufacturers through 2030 anyway. So I don't foresee huge changes. I mean, there'll be some change. People will migrate maybe to electric vehicles or maybe hybrid, certain people. But there's a pretty big segment of the market where that's just not. It doesn't make sense for some people. People who drive long distances, people who pull heavy loads, right? I mean, there's just certain vehicles that, if you got to pull a skid load every day, it's a diesel truck. It's just the way it is.
Yeah,
not going to be anything else. So, how do you feel about diesel technology?
Well, I'll be the first person to say I don't know enough about it because I don't really work on a whole lot of diesels. Gotcha. But where's it going? I don't know.
Well, you had the whole Dieselgate thing with Volkswagen, and there was some backpedaling, and diesel markets were going one way, and then they've been trying to make more and more inroads. I don't know. I think that I think there's an ever-changing regulatory landscape sometimes that I think that has a really big impact on what we see and what we work on.
Well, yeah, definitely.
The rules change.
Yeah, the rules change, all kinds of restrictions and emissions. We haven't been an emission state since, was it the 80s or whatever in Minnesota? But I wouldn't be surprised to see that come back at some point in the next decade. But
I like my old Suburban. So.
My check engine light on my Buick was on for so long with the P0420. The light burnt out. One day I hopped in, I'm like, oh, the light's off. That's cool. I scanned it, and I got a code for the MIL circuits.
It's on there for so long it burned out. That's the thing about technicians that people don't think they understand. I think that's synonymous with every trade. It's like you go to a plumber's house, he probably has leaky faucets. You go to an electrician's house, all light fixtures are bad. You go to a carpenter's house, it's trim work's not done still.
Exactly.
You go to a mechanic's car, it's like, damn, dude, what's wrong with this car? I don't have time.
I've been fixing cars all day long. The last thing I want to do is, I'll give it to the guys who are like really big, like race enthusiasts, and they do that stuff. I'll tell you what, I'm impressed because doing this like as a full-time career, I love it. I really do. That's why I'm podcasting at 8:00 at night. But when I got done at Firestone at 6:00 or whatever, the last thing I wanted to do was come home and work on another vehicle. But some guys do, and they freaking love it, and that's all they want to do. And they're on the racetrack on Saturday, and I got away from that. I lost that side of the passion, I guess.
Well, I went to Lincoln Tech a long time ago when I was just I was in my Yeah, I was in my early 20s. I was going to school at night at Lincoln Tech, and I was working as a mechanics helper at a Chevron. That's how I started my career as a mechanics helper at a gas station. I went to Lincoln Tech at night, and my engine instructor, Mr. Grable, former Army guy, no frills, no BS from this guy. I think he was cool. He was cool, but I mean, yeah, he there no frills. He was right to the point, right? So he was introducing himself, and he's like, "Welcome to engines class. I'm Mr. Grable, right?" And blah blah blah. And he's like, "I want to kind of take a quick survey." You know, he started asking people what their hobbies were. So he's talking to people. What's your hobby? Oh, I build go-karts and motorcycles, and I race. Okay, what's your hobby? Oh, I'm a drag racer. I do this. And he's going down the line asking people what all their hobbies are. And almost all of us it was something automotive or racing or motorcycles or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. If you're going to stay in this industry as a career for you're all in your 20s, the next 40 years, find a hobby that doesn't have anything to do with cars, and you'll make it to the end of 40 years. If you don't, you'll burn out and be gone.
Yeah.
He was totally right. Because I did this thing working at night and working on side jobs. Man, I burned out. I hit a spot, and I was just like, oh man, I need to. And I did.
Yep.
It was like a light switch. It was like done with side work, done with that sort of, And I became like what you said. Work got done. I'm done wrenching.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yep.
If I had to fix something on one of my cars because it was broken, I would do it. But yeah, I'm not the guy that's out there tearing my engine apart just because I want to, because it's cool. Nope.
But I know a guy, a real close friend of mine, that he is like that still. Like, we're the same age, we went to the same tech school, and he's still full-time mechanic, and he goes home and he wants to work on that stuff. So I'm impressed. It blows me away that he's really got it. It is, oil is in his blood,
right?
Probably legitimately, but
yeah, I have to wonder. Not for me. I love cars, and I like do the diagnostics. But that's what led me to Identifix. Was I liked doing the work that didn't pay very well. I guess that's kind of how I always figured out where I want. Everyone's like, "Oh, I can't wait to do CV boots and brakes." I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Come on, man. We've only done that like a bazillion times. Oh, it was gravy. I'm like, yeah, I just, it did. That kind of work got really mundane.
Well, that's the thing, is once it gets gravy or too easy, and yes, money is nice, don't get me wrong. An easy set of ball joints was great, but once it gets too easy, that's part of what lessens the passion for me, right? Yes. I almost want to be challenged by something. I should be careful what I say, because I'll get just 3 ass kickers tomorrow. But I almost want it to be a little bit of a struggle. It's just, you got to go to work every day for something, and that's that hill you have to climb to get to the top and figure it out. It's really satisfying. And I've done it enough times to recognize that, okay, it's very satisfying to do this. So I almost want to seek that out. So of course, diagnostics on modern vehicles is a great way to challenge yourself and get your ass kicked. But
you're not kidding, man. That was the most difficult job ever. I mean, it was the most, it was probably the one job that I missed the most, is being on the phones. Really. I mean, of all the things I've done in my career, and I like this job. This is cool. It's just it's cool in a different way. So it's different working with developers and applications, and it's like you can help shape some of the products and things that are going to help, which is great. It's just different. But yeah, I mean, of all jobs I've ever missed, that would be the one, because it was always exciting. There was never a moment where you felt like it was gravy. You get an occasional gravy call here, gravy. I mean, it would be a call that you knew, okay, I know what this is, because I've seen it before. And, and the archiving system, sometimes there's a delay, right? So when the first call comes in, by the time you get to the second or third call and you start to see a pattern and you write an archive, by the time it gets through the system and filtered and gets out onto the site and eventually gets into, so there's sort of a a delay period. So it just the way the system works, right? So you take calls, the repair order gets processed, it winds up eventually into your archiving bucket. You pull it out, you eventually author it, bam, and then maybe it doesn't get a confirmed fix, and it might take a month or so. So you see those calls would, I guess they would be gravy, because okay, I've diagnosed this before, and then what would happen is once it got onto the archive, got on the site, then those calls would just sort of drop off, and then there'd be new calls of new stuff. So it was always pretty exciting.
Yeah, but you never know when that that really oddball call is coming in. It's just always around the corner.
Oh yeah, there was plenty of calls where it was kind of like I'd have Jim Newkirk or someone help me and be like, hey man, can you take this for me? I'm tapped out on it. Well, I would do it out of respect for the person on the phone. I'm like, I can't help. I can't get this one. There's something I'm missing something, right? Or we're in the wrong place or whatever it was. But yeah, those happen for sure.
Awesome. Well, we're about an hour and a half. This is fantastic.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm glad you got some good content for your show.
I just enjoyed talking with you. This is great.
No, it is cool. You have good questions, and it's nice to see you're in the industry, because you're someone that they need. Definitely. I mean, I'm serious. There is a real need. I mean, from my working on the phone, I can say that probably 20% of the people that called in were top shelf guys that didn't need assistance. They just missed one little piece, or they needed an idea. They needed to hear something, right? That a guy like you, there were certain guys that you could say when they called in, they had their ducks in a row, they were close. There was just one little thing missing, or they just didn't quite get something, or there was some system that was just a little foggy, or whatever it was, right? Yeah. But for the most part, those guys knew what they were doing. And there were people that definitely needed to call in because they were more like repair. So you have kind of like repair-minded people, diagnostic-minded people. And it's just kind of a wiring. The guy that can replace parts super fast in a way that I can't do, but can't diagnose. And then you got the guys that diagnose, but maybe they don't replace parts quite so fast. Rarely do you have both those same mindsets living in the same person, because they're entirely different.
Yep.
The repair mindset is get it in, get it done, knock it out. Bam, right? Just want to get in there and tear into it, right?
Yep.
The diagnostic mindset is like, whoa, wait a second. Let's get some data on this. What's really going on? Come here, talk to me. Let me see. Okay, so you're going to kind of slowly, methodically go in, try to figure out what's going on. It's just, so those phone calls were a lot different, but it's kind of the same thing that's happened a lot. Is you would have the teams, you'd have the guy that kind of figured out what was wrong, and you have the guy that could blast out parts, and you'd have a person that maybe is the go-between, the person collecting stuff, doing stuff, getting cars, lining stuff up, right? So I think you have all this stuff going on all the time in the automotive industry. And I think that the repair people need the diagnostic people more now than they did 20 years ago, because they could eke out some of the diagnostics back in. That mindset was, cars were just simple enough. They could do all the repairs and they could figure out some of the stuff. Now they're not. They can still do the repairs, but now it's so complicated they can't. So I think that the same proportion exists. Just the complexity of the cars has made it so that they can't do any of that type of work anymore. They used to be able to do some of it, right? So the average mechanic could do some of the electrical diagnostics. They could do some of these things, right? They could do a certain percentage. The repair type people could kind of get through some of those things, and it didn't kick their butt too bad. But a car comes in with a flex ray problem on a BMW, and the person that's the steering and suspension guy, I mean, other than calibrating the steering angle sensor every now and then, I mean, that's about as deep in as they're willing to get, right?
Yep, they're up against it.
Not to knock those people. It's that mindset of, I'm the repair guy, I can blast these jobs out. The complexity now, it's they can do almost none of that type of work anymore. So
I totally agree. There's some
ways you can specialize now for each role. And obviously on the technical side of things, you can pick a lot of different avenues to go. So like I said, there's some money to be made, lots of broken cars. Let's just get out there and do it. Right.
There you go, man. There you go. We all do our part.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Just want to give one more big thank you to Adam for joining me on the show today. Enjoyed sitting down and talking with him. Hopefully you enjoyed that and got something out of it as well. But that's going to do it for today. Other than that, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.